I want you to picture a resume. It's a complete train wreck. At the top, it says founder and CEO, but the company only lasted 18 months. The next entry. Founder, another company. This one shuttered in a year. Then another, and another. It's a graveyard of logos and dead websites. Your first thought is probably pity. You picture someone who's just not cut out for it, someone who keeps trying and failing, bless their heart. Then the candidate walks in for the interview. You're expecting excuses, maybe some vague talk about bad timing or market headwinds, but they don't give you that. You ask them, so what happened with this first company? And they don't flinch. They lean forward and say, we failed because our customer acquisition cost was 30% higher than our lifetime value. We tried 3 different channels, but we couldn't fix the unit economics. For the next one. Great product, but we fundamentally misunderstood the B2B sales cycle. We were built for a 30-day close, but the reality was 9 months. He gives you a clinical, almost surgical postmortem for every single failure on that resume. And that's when this feeling creeps in. And it isn't pity, it's a kind of professional fear. You realize you're not talking to a failure. You're talking to someone who has paid for an education more brutal and more valuable than any MBA. They didn't just read about the storm, they've navigated a dozen of them and learned to map every rock and reef by crashing into it. And that person is far more dangerous than the one who's never failed at all. Welcome to a deep dive into something we often dread, avoid, and frankly misunderstand, failure. We're going to unpack why our aversion to it might actually be holding us back, and how some of the most innovative corners of the world have learned to not just tolerate failure, but, to transform it into this powerful engine for progress. We're going to challenge a very fundamental assumption today.
Yeah, absolutely. And we certainly got some fascinating material to work with here. It all seems to point to this singular, maybe even counterintuitive truth. Failures, when you really understand them, when you leverage them properly, they aren't setbacks at all. They're incredibly rich data points. They're direct pathways to mastery, even, and vital catalysts for innovation.
Right.
We'll explore how this plays out across different fields, from the tech giants in Silicon Valley doing their A/B testing to the surgeon's operating table, believe it or not, and even within the very fabric of how companies build their culture. It's really about shifting our perception, isn't it? Moving from seeing it as just a bad outcome to seeing it as an invaluable lesson, seeing that curriculum hidden inside every misstep.
That opening, wow, it really sticks with you, doesn't it?
Right.
This idea that a resume just full of what looks like failures could actually be a sign of this brutal but incredibly valuable education. It really challenges our basic assumptions about what success even looks like. So let's unpack this. How exactly does this play out in, say, the world of technology, where the stakes can be incredibly high? How do they make it systematic?
Well, what's fascinating here is how this philosophy, it's not just, anecdotal tales from famous founders. It's actually built into the system. It's institutionalized in core methodologies like the lean startup approach.
Yeah.
The whole process is intentionally designed to take what you might normally call a product failure and just turn it into a really clear, actionable insight.
Actionable insight, okay.
Yeah, it's about getting past that emotional sting, the disappointment of a setback, and just extracting the pure, unadulterated data it gives you. Almost like a scientist running an experiment. A failed experiment still gives you data, right?
Yeah.
It tells you what doesn't work.
Narrows down the possibilities.
Exactly. Narrows it right down.
And we've got a great example that really brings this whole idea to life, doesn't it? A story that kind of encapsulates this transformation of failure into data. I came across it probably from a few years back about this small startup in San Francisco. Let's call the founder Priya. So Priya and her 2 co-founders, they'd poured like a year of their lives, all their savings, everything into this app. Their big idea was this platform, for connecting local musicians, find bandmates, collaborate, share riffs, that kind of thing.
The dream.
The dream. They launched it with a big party, hope, champagne, dreams of disrupting the scene, and then, crickets. The daily active user count was just dismal, barely a blip.
Oof.
Yeah. And they were burning through their cash fast. The mood in their little office went from, hopeful buzz to this heavy, almost desperate silence. Most people in that spot, they feel despair, maybe shame, questioning everything.
Sure, absolutely. That's the natural reaction.
But Priya, she'd been mentored in this lean startup method, this philosophy built on quick experiments, iteration. So instead of writing the company's obituary, she did something really different. She treated the failure as a data set. They just dove into the analytics clinically, sifting through every click, every user journey, and they saw, okay, almost nobody was using their main feature, the find a bandmate thing, their big vision, ignored.
Wow.
But A surprising number, small but consistent, were using this really simple chat function, almost an afterthought feature, just for quick messages. But people were using it to organize informal open mic nights, share jam session details, coordinate meetups.
Still a hidden use case.
Exactly. This tiny overlooked feature almost lost in the noise. But they realized, that was the signal. Priya and her team, they didn't see that initial crushing failure as like a judgment on them or that they weren't smart enough. No, they reframed it. They saw it as this incredibly expensive, yes, but ultimately super clear A/B test.
Expensive lesson, yeah.
Right. And the result, their first hypothesis was wrong. But the data showed this clear, unmet need. So they just ruthlessly stripped down the app, cut everything except that simple chat and event tool, refocused entirely on a platform just for discovering and RSVPing to local informal music events. It wasn't the grand vision they started with, not at all, but it was exactly what the data told them people actually wanted. That failure of the first product, it wasn't the end. It became this sharp pivot point, an arrow pointing them in a totally new and ultimately more viable direction.
That story, Priya's story, it just perfectly encapsulates that whole Silicon Valley ethos, doesn't it? It's not about trying to avoid failure at all costs. It's about building systems, institutionalizing it so failure isn't this catastrophic event.
Yeah.
It's a point on a graph, an unemotional data point that guides the next step, the next iteration. This shift, from seeing it as a devastating personal thing to just neutral, usable data. That's really at the heart of their innovation engine.
Yeah.
It's this relentless process, isn't it? Rapidly testing assumptions, getting user data, and then having the discipline, the humility, really, to adjust based on what users do, not what you think they'll do.
Or even what you want them to do.
Exactly. Humility before the data. That's key.
That's a really crucial distinction. That discipline to listen even when the data basically tells you your baby is ugly, or at least not that the baby you thought it was. So, okay, let's dig into this institutionalization idea more. What are the nuts and bolts? Like, practically, how do these companies turn a flop, big or small, into that clear data point? You mentioned A/B testing earlier.
Precisely. A/B testing is like a core mechanism for this. It's a really systematic way to experiment and learn, often at a massive scale. At its simplest, right? It's just a method where teams compare two versions of something, version A versus version B, to see which one performs better.
Based on real users.
Based on actual user data, yeah. And the real power, the beauty of it, is how it dramatically cuts the risk of rolling out big changes that might accidentally tank your user experience. You get to experiment in this controlled way, isolate variables before you commit to something permanent that could alienate everyone.
So you're making the cost of failure really small. It's just a contained experiment.
Exactly right. And the process itself, it's pretty methodical. It's designed to squeeze the maximum learning out of every single test. First step, you've got to identify a clear objective. What exactly are you trying to improve?
Right.
Is it sign-up rates, conversions, user engagement with a specific button? Having that focused, measurable goal is critical. You can't learn if you don't know what success looks like for this test.
Yeah, otherwise you're just flailing. Like, if you don't know where you're going.
Any road will take you there, exactly.
Oh.
But you won't know if it's the right road. Okay, so once you have the objective, step 2 is to formulate a hypothesis. This is your educated guess.
Like a prediction.
A testable prediction. For instance, changing our call to action button from blue to red will boost clicks by 15%, something specific. Then third, you create your test variants. Version A is the control, the original unchanged version. Version B introduces one single change.
Just one thing.
Just one thing. This is so important. Could be tiny button placement, wording, could be bigger, like a whole page redesign element, but isolating that one variable is key, so you can actually pinpoint its impact later.
Okay, makes sense. And then what? How do you actually run it without, breaking things for users?
Good question. Step 4 is you randomly split your user traffic. Crucial step. Users have to be distributed evenly and randomly between A and B. This prevents bias, ensures a fair comparison. You don't want, all your power users seeing version B, right?
Right, that would skew everything.
Totally. Then step 5, you run the test. You use tools for this. Google Optimizely, VWO. Lots of them out there. And you need to let it run long enough to get statistically meaningful data. It's not always about speed. It's about getting enough reliable data. And finally, step 6, you analyze the result against those metrics you set at the start. Did version B actually increase clicks or conversions? Was your hypothesis right? If the variant clearly wins and the data looks solid, then step 7 is you implement the winning version for everyone.
And if it doesn't win?
If it doesn't, or it's inconclusive, you stick with the original or you iterate. Because even a non-winner test that's still a super valuable data point. It tells you something didn't work or didn't work as expected.
So it's this very systematic way to fail small, learn super fast. But how do you make sure the data you're getting is actually good data, reliable data? Because, garbage in, garbage out, right? Bad data leads to bad decisions.
Precisely. Getting reliable data means sticking to best practices and avoiding some really common pitfalls. First one, and I know I just said it, but it bears repeating, test one variable at a time. Change 5 things. You've learned nothing about which thing mattered. It's like trying to debug code by changing 10 lines at once.
Chaos.
Total chaos. Second, set clear metrics, KPIs before you start. Define those quantifiable measures. Conversion rates, engagement, click-through rates, CTR, whatever matters for your goal. This keeps the evaluation objective, not just, I think version B felt better.
Right, need numbers.
Exactly. Third, run tests long enough. Short tests, often useless. They don't capture normal fluctuations, like weekend versus weekday behavior. You need enough time for statistically significant data volume. Don't rush it. Fourth, avoid bias. Ensure that traffic split is genuinely random and even. Any skew there invalidates your results. And fifth, crucially, be ready to iterate. A/B testing isn't a magic bullet, it's an ongoing process. No clear winner. Don't just give up. Refine the hypothesis, tweak the variable, learn from what did happen, and test again. Learning never stops.
Okay, so those are the things to do. What about the traps to avoid?
Right, the pitfalls. Well, besides testing too many variables, a big one is relying on insufficient data. Not enough traffic, not enough interactions. Your results mean nothing. You need statistical significance, a robust sample size. Don't call it too early. And another major mistake, overlooking user segments. Don't just look at the overall average. Different groups, mobile versus desktop users, new versus returning visitors, different demographics, they often react very differently. Segmenting your results can reveal huge insights. Maybe version B failed overall, but it was a massive win for your mobile users or for new visitors. That's gold.
That's interesting. So even if a test looks like a failure on the surface...
It's definitely not a waste. Not if you analyze it properly. That's still incredibly valuable data. Finding out what doesn't work is often just as important, or maybe more important than finding out what does. It helps you cross paths off the map.
Eliminates options.
Exactly. So a failed A/B test, in the traditional sense, is never really a failure. It's always a chance to learn. If a test tanks, you need to dig in, analyze the data deeply to figure out why. Were there external factors maybe? A competitor's campaign? Was the test duration actually long enough? Did you hit statistical significance? Asking these questions sharpens your next attempt. Then, you might need to adjust your hypothesis. Maybe the assumption was just wrong. Or maybe the change you made was too subtle, didn't move the needle enough. So you revise, maybe make a bolder change, and retest. Ultimately, every single test, win or lose, is an opportunity to learn and iterate. It builds this incredibly detailed picture of your audience and what actually works for them.
Do you have an example of this in action, like a company that really used this iterative testing well?
Oh, absolutely. Think about Airbnb.
Mm.
They didn't just stumble into their massive success. They used A/B testing extensively to optimize every tiny little detail. The layout of listing pages, the wording on call to action buttons, the photos they showed, everything. By constantly testing different designs, different copy, they were able to systematically increase click-through rates and ultimately bookings. Now, tons of those tests probably failed in the sense they didn't produce a clear winner or the gains were tiny. But each one provided direction. Each one was a data point. It shows how even these small, seemingly insignificant failures or suboptimal results, when you approach them systematically, they guide massive improvements over time. They become the building blocks.
Yeah, it really seems designed to take the fear out of failure, make it more clinical, less emotional, more objective, like you said, mapping the rocks and reefs by, well, bumping into them carefully instead of being terrified of them. It's turning that perceived weakness into a real strength. Okay, so shifting gears a little bit. This whole idea of learning from failure, or maybe learning by failing, it's not just for products or companies, is it? It feels like it applies even more deeply to mastering individual skills, personal growth, and this is where it gets really interesting, I think.
Well, absolutely. The insights we have really point to a profound difference in outcomes when learning is super experiential, involving a high volume of these small, recoverable failures compared to just pure theoretical study.
Like reading a book versus actually doing the thing.
Exactly. It's about building that practical fluency, that intuitive understanding, not just intellectual comprehension. It's not just repetition either. It's about your brain literally rewiring itself through direct interaction with the problem, with the task.
Let's try to picture someone, maybe a young man named Kenji in Tokyo. So Kenji had spent 2 long years studying computer science at a top university in Tokyo. He aced his exams on algorithms, data structures, knew the theory inside out, could debate programming paradigms, super smart on paper.
Book smart.
Totally book smart. But he felt this deep sense of inadequacy because he couldn't actually build anything real. The gap between knowing about coding and doing it felt huge. So, frustrated, he does something pretty radical. He enrolls in this intense 12-week software development bootcamp.
Oh, the bootcamp route.
Yeah, and from day one, it's just completely different, no long lectures. The instructor walks in, points at a screen, says something like, okay, today we're building a food delivery app clone. Go.
Wow, thrown right in.
Totally thrown in. 10 hours a day, Kenji and the others are just immersed. Coding, debugging, running into errors constantly, fixing bugs, collaborating like crazy. Kenji probably failed, quote unquote, 100 times a day.
Easily.
A misplaced comma crashes everything. A subtle logic error sends data haywire. Each failure. Small, immediate, frustrating for sure. You feel that pang, I messed up again. But the immediacy means an immediate chance to fix it right then and there.
And learn from it instantly.
Exactly. And with every single fix, he's learning viscerally, not just memorizing syntax, but building this muscle memory for debugging, for problem solving, seeing how systems really connect, where they break. One evening, he's stuck for hours on this tough problem, finally cracked it, code runs perfectly. And this wave of realization hits him. He learned more about real-world debugging and system architecture in that 1 month of constant failing and fixing than in 2 years of university theory.
That's powerful.
Yeah. Those past failures weren't just mistakes anymore. They were this huge library of experiences he could draw on instantly. He was mastering the craft not by studying it, but by doing it, deliberately practicing its application over and over and over. It really highlights that contrast, doesn't it? Theory versus this high-intensity, fail-fast experiential learning.
Kenji's story just nails the efficiency of experiential learning, especially for practical skills like coding or design or playing an instrument. It really is like learning a language through immersion versus just studying grammar rules. Right. That constant cycle, trial, error, immediate correction. It builds this dense network of neural pathways. Theory alone just can't replicate that. You're not just building knowledge about something, you're building the capability to do it. It becomes intuitive.
So what is it specifically that makes this hands-on or experiential stuff so much more powerful than just reading or listening? Is it just the sheer volume, the reps, or is there something deeper going on, maybe neurologically?
Well, the core difference is that active engagement. It leads to much deeper retention and, crucially, practical application. When we look at the benefits for career advancement, it's huge. Practical learning equips you with skills employers actually need.
Skills you can use on day one.
Exactly. It boosts your employability, your promotability, because you're not just theory smart, you're ready to contribute immediately. It prepares you for industry demands because you've already got some real-world or simulated real-world experience under your belt. And beyond that, practical learning often involves collaboration, right? Working on projects together. That leads to networking, mentorship, things that solitary study just doesn't offer in the same way.
Yeah.
And critically, it develops those problem-solving skills you need for complex, messy, real-world work environments.
Makes total sense from a career angle, but scientifically, psychologically,
Yeah.
why is doing so much better than just knowing?
Yeah, scientifically, it's even clearer. First off, active learning just crushes passive learning like lectures or videos when it comes to knowledge retention. When you do something, your brain engages more deeply, forms stronger neural connections. You remember it better because you experienced it.
It's wired in differently.
Wired in differently, exactly. Second, and this is vital in so many fields, it builds muscle memory and hand-eye coordination. Think about surgeons, musicians, athletes. Precise movements become internalized through repeated practice. The body learns alongside the mind. Actions become intuitive, not consciously directed. Third, you get real-time feedback. Imagine learning surgery with an expert guiding your hand or coding with a senior dev looking over your shoulder. Immediate correction stops bad habits before they form. That's huge because unlearning bad habits is way harder.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Fourth, it often lowers the learning curve. Structured practice, tackling things in manageable chunks, it reduces anxiety and makes you more efficient. You're not overwhelmed by the whole mountain, just focus on the next step. And finally, maybe most importantly for this discussion, it provides a psychologically safe space to make mistakes. You can try things, mess up, self-correct with guidance, all without the high stakes of the real world. This allows for experimentation, for curiosity, without the fear of major consequences. You explore the boundaries.
It sounds like you're literally building pathways, physical and mental, for these skills. Are there examples outside of tech, like in really traditional high-stakes fields where a mistake is, well, much more serious, lives on the line kind of stuff?
Oh, absolutely. A prime example is surgical training, specifically for laparoscopic surgery. The minimally invasive kind with cameras and specialized tools.
Keyhole surgery, right?
Exactly. It demands incredible hand-eye coordination, depth perception, just total proficiency with these complex instruments. And you simply cannot learn that fully from lectures or books or even just watching other surgeons. You have to do it. So this training happens in specialized simulation centers. They use advanced robotic simulators, sometimes animal models, sometimes cadaver labs. And the benefits are just massive. Surgeons develop better skills, more precision.
Which means
more confidence, less anxiety for them, and critically, better patient outcomes. Fewer complications, shorter surgeries, faster recoveries for patients. It also dramatically speeds up how quickly they acquire these complex skills compared to older methods.
So it's not just practice, it's like deliberate, focused practice, pushing the edge, making errors in a safe space, immediate correction.
Precisely. Deliberate practice. And these simulations expose them to realistic challenges, things that might go wrong in a real operation, so they're better prepared. Plus, they get networking, mentorship from expert surgeons. And obviously, it keeps them up to date with the latest tech. This hands-on approach literally transforms theoretical knowledge into practical life-saving skills. It's the absolute difference between knowing how to do it and actually being able to do it under pressure.
Wow, that makes so much sense when you put it that way. It's like that baby method we talked about earlier. Toddlers falling 17 times an hour learning to walk. They're not thinking about physics, they're just getting reps in, collecting data points with every stumble. It feels like this primal learning mode we adults kind of forget or suppress.
Precisely. That's what we call the universal law of volume. Nature's method for teaching walking is the perfect demo, falling 17 times an hour for months. They don't rationalize, they don't strategize, they definitely don't quit after the 10th fall. Their nervous system just logs a data point, adjusts, tries again. High volume, continuous feedback loop. Incredibly efficient. But as adults, we tend to short-circuit that. We try something, fall once, maybe twice, then retreat into our heads. We rationalize, analyze, try to think our way through it, read another book, watch another video.
Yeah, we want the intellectual shortcut.
We want the shortcut. But just like you can't reason a baby into walking, you can't substitute passive learning for what the failure of actually doing teaches you. Our subconscious learning system doesn't need another theory. It needs reps. It needs data. It needs to fall. Whether that's with keywords, headlines, product design, sales pitches, not once or twice. Hundreds, thousands of times.
So it really boils down to the quantity of informed attempts rather than trying to perfect a single attempt.
It's absolutely about the quantity of informed attempts. And this isn't just for startups or walking. It's a fundamental law of mastery.
Yeah.
Everywhere. Think about authors. It takes, on average, 6 to 10 published books to land a really big contract. That's not 10 attempts. That's thousands of failed pages, maybe millions of words written and discarded before they hit that professional stride.
Wow.
Painters cover acres of canvas before a major sale. Guitarists play thousands, millions of notes, practicing daily for years to get that effortless virtuosity. What looks like failure, the unpublished book, the unsold painting, the missed note, that's the curriculum. It's not incompetence. It's literally the list of classes taken, each one building visceral expertise. It's a portfolio of learned experience.
So the more we fail, but in that structured, iterative way, the faster we actually learn and master things. It's about separating the emotion, the sting from the objective data point, turning that vulnerability into almost a strategic advantage. It completely reframes what failure even means.
Okay, so this reframing of failure, from personal mindset to product development systems to skill mastery, it clearly has huge implications. But now, thinking bigger picture, how do you create an entire organizational culture where this is the norm, where people genuinely aren't afraid to fail, to experiment, to learn out loud? Because changing one person's mind is tough. Changing a whole company's ingrained culture, that feels like a monumental task.
You're absolutely right. It's a huge challenge. And this brings us to maybe the most crucial element, cultivating what's called a psychologically safe environment. Without that foundation, all the slogans about learning from failure are just hot air, really.
Yeah, posters on the wall. Exactly. People won't stick their necks out, won't admit mistakes, won't ask dumb questions, and therefore won't truly learn or innovate if they fear blame, ridicule, or career consequences. Psychological safety is the absolute bedrock for a true learning culture.
I heard a story about a manager at a big tech firm in Seattle. Let's call her Maria. Her experience really nails this point, I think. So Maria is this mid-level manager, right? Overseeing a team working on a critical cloud storage product. They push a major update, months of work. Then hours later, alerts start firing. Uh-oh. A small group of users are hitting critical data access errors.
Nightmare scenario.
Total nightmare. It gets traced back pretty quickly to a logic mistake in code written by a junior engineer, David. David is, understandably, mortified, stomach sinks, thinks his career is over, he'll be the scapegoat, reputation ruined, just crushed by the weight of it.
Yeah, that fear is real.
But when Maria calls the team together for an immediate post-mortem, her very first words change everything. She starts by saying, okay, folks, the system, not the person, failed here. Our review process, our automated testing, it let this slip through. David's code, his discovery, actually exposed a critical weakness for us, and honestly, that's incredibly valuable information. Now let's walk through the timeline calmly and figure out the process gaps.
Wow, that's leadership.
Isn't it? The whole vibe in the room just shifts silently. It's not an investigation to find who to blame. It becomes this collaborative effort to improve the system. And David, instead of being defensive or quiet, he feels safe enough to openly explain his thinking when he wrote the code, which helps the senior engineers pinpoint the exact blind spot in their code review checklist, a scenario they just hadn't considered.
Yeah.
That failure became this powerful learning event, made the team stronger, the product more resilient. It wasn't just about fixing the bug, it was about fixing the process that allowed the bug.
Maria's leadership there was just textbook psychological safety creation. She actively, deliberately reframed it, away from individual blame towards a system data point. By doing that, she didn't just fix a technical issue, she built trust. She encouraged future calculated risks without that paralyzing fear. That is the soil where real experimentation and innovation can actually grow. Leaders don't just permit safety, they actively model it, reinforce it, especially in tough moments.
So psychological safety isn't just like a nice to have some soft HR thing, it's foundational. It's a strategic imperative for learning and innovation. Okay, so what does a full-blown learning culture look like then? How do you build that practically sustainably across a whole organization?
You're spot on. It's absolutely strategic, not soft at all. A true learning culture is an environment where learning, both individual and organizational, isn't just allowed. It's actively encouraged, expected, valued, even rewarded. It gets baked into the company's DNA, its ecosystem, not just written in a handbook. And building it generally involves focusing on 4 key interconnected components. First, you need to intentionally attract and develop agile learners. Seek out people who have what's called learning agility. These are folks who learn fast from experience. They're open to challenging their own views. They stay curious. They seek out new stuff. They have that growth mindset.
How do you spot that in hiring?
You ask different questions. Go beyond technical skills. Ask how they handle tough situations, what they learned from mistakes, how they applied those learnings. For your current teams, you actively encourage curiosity. Provide diverse on-the-job learning, stretch assignments that push comfort zones, mentoring, coaching. And democratize it, make sure growth opportunities aren't just for the high potentials.
So find the learners and feed them. Got it.
Feed the learners, exactly. Second, as Maria's story showed so well, you absolutely have to create an environment that supports psychological safety. This fosters the deep trust and collaboration needed. It's a place where candor is welcome, where you can ask questions early without feeling dumb, where you can admit mistakes without fearing retribution. And senior leaders have a huge role here. They need to openly admit their own mistakes, share their failing forward stories, show vulnerability. That unlocks collective learning, helps find lessons in setbacks, makes space for dissenting opinions, fosters those really candid conversations that get past polite BS. It's about being genuinely open, not just nice.
Okay, safety is key. What's third?
Third, you need to encourage better conversations and feedback everywhere. Make effective communication and feedback loops just part of the normal rhythm of work, not some special event. Routinely giving and seeking feedback, both positive and developmental, is huge for talent growth. It's not just annual reviews, it's ongoing, high-quality chats, building a shared understanding of what good communication looks like so new skills spread organically, constant calibration. And finally, fourth, you must make learning an explicit organizational priority. Send clear signals as valued. Look at your policies, your reward systems, career paths that they actually reinforce learning. Implement regular events. Maybe Lunch and learns, with leaders sharing experiences, formal after-action reviews for projects, learning communities for peers, maybe even designated development days.
Dedicated time.
Dedicated time, and make development inclusive, different formats for different needs. Asynchronous, in-person, self-paced, virtual, provide the tools, the resources, and crucially, the time and space. Learning isn't just another task. It's an investment. Treat it like one.
That sounds comprehensive, a really fundamental shift. But let's be real. How often do organizations actually pull this off, this true learning culture? Because we've all seen companies say they value learning from failure, but then their actions scream the opposite. That gap between talk and walk can be massive. Is this genuinely achievable?
That is such an important reality check, and it's definitely nuanced. That ideal just culture, the learning-focused one we describe, is often misunderstood. And in practice, it frequently coexists, often quite uncomfortably, with elements of a traditional blame culture. It's very rarely a clean switch an organization just flips. A just culture is about learning, yes, system improvement, yes. But, and this is critical, it is not a no-blame culture. It still recognizes accountability, responsibility. It draws a clear line between honest mistakes or system errors, which are learning opportunities, and unacceptable behavior like recklessness or willful negligence.
So it's not a free pass for anything, but it is a pass to learn from genuine mistakes within the system.
Precisely. And the reality on the ground is that just and blame elements often live side by side in the same company. Maybe one department is pretty good and another is terrible. Maybe the official policies sound just, but the manager's actual behavior, the team's unwritten rules, are still very blame-oriented. You see this clash in different areas. Take near-miss reporting systems. A just culture emphasizes confidentiality, feedback, learning from close calls. A blame culture might focus on punishing whoever reported the near-miss or who was involved, which just drives reporting underground.
Hides the problem.
Exactly. Or responses after accidents. Just culture offers support, recognizes trauma, second victims, blame culture, scapegoating, distancing, public shaming, erodes trust completely. Look at sanctioning systems. Just culture considers context. Why did the error happen? What were the pressures, the system flaws? Blame culture applies penalties rigidly based on the rule violation, ignores context, even accident investigations. Just culture seeks system contributions, talks to operators, understands their world. Blame culture hunts for the culprit, often dismisses the operator's perspective, misses the real system issues, and finally, improvement actions. Just culture looks at systemic impact, fixes the system. Blame culture often just retrains the individual, assumes they are the only problem, leaves the faulty system untouched.
So, like you said, a company might invest heavily in a fancy, confidential, just reporting system, but if the team culture is still one where people get teased or judged for reporting stuff, the blame culture wins out in practice. The unwritten rules trump the written ones.
That's it, exactly. A perfect example. Think about aviation safety. Investigations are often incredibly systems-based, a hallmark of just culture thinking. They look at everything, but then sometimes the only corrective action taken is retraining the pilot involved. That's leaning back towards a blame culture fix, right? It fails to address the deeper systemic issues that may be contributed to the pilot's error in the first place. You see this coexistence all the time. It shows how deep-rooted these cultural patterns are.
This reminds me so much of the whole agile thing in tech. You know, it's supposed to be all about learning, adapting, responding to change, embracing uncertainty, but you hear constantly about companies claiming to be agile while managers still operate in the old command and control ways. It feels like a perfect example of the label not matching reality and where failure gets blamed on the methodology instead of the implementation.
That is a perfect parallel, spot on. And our material touches on exactly this in the "Is Agile Scrum a Failure?" discussion. You hear it all the time, people saying Agile or Scrum failed them. They point to unmet promises, missed deadlines, projects that just didn't deliver. But the common counter-argument from proponents is often, well, they weren't really doing Agile. They just slapped a Scrum label on their old process. They adopted the ceremonies, the stand-ups, the retros, but completely missed the fundamental mindset shift required.
The values and principles underneath.
Exactly. Agile is fundamentally a set of values and principles, collaboration, responding to change, working software. Scrum's just one framework to help you be agile. It's not magic. You can't just go through the motions and expect transformation. In fact, a useful way to think about Agile, much like Lean, is as a problem visualizing framework, maybe more than a problem-solving one. Its primary job is often to make the organization's existing dysfunctions, bottlenecks, and inefficiencies painfully visible. Unignorable. It shines a big spotlight on what needs fixing.
So the failure isn't Agile itself, but maybe the organization's unwillingness or inability to actually fix the problems that Agile reveals.
That's often the core issue. The implementation pitfalls are everywhere. Micromanagement disguised as daily stand-ups, consultants selling buzzwords without substance, managers clinging desperately to command and control because they fear losing power. It leads to these flaming piles of anti-patterns, as some call it. Real success with Agile needs actual adherence to the principles and applying it in the right context, usually complex, uncertain situations where you need to iterate and discover the solution. This whole debate often mirrors that communism argument. Critics say it failed, proponents say that wasn't the real version. But fundamentally, the issue often boils down to a lack of deep understanding and genuine commitment, especially from leadership, to truly change how work gets done and how learning is valued.
So it seems like across the board, products, skills, culture, the real failure often isn't in the attempt itself or even the concept. It's in how we approach it, how we interpret it, how we leverage the experience. It's about transforming that feeling of losing or stumbling into this ongoing, incredibly valuable process of learning. Being brave enough, really, to treat every setback as a classroom, not a final judgment. Hashtag outro, Brittany.
Yeah, we've really covered some ground here, exploring how this whole concept of failure can be completely reframed, seeing it not as some final endpoint, but just as a crucial step, maybe the crucial step in a continuous learning loop. From the really precise data points you get from A/B testing in tech to the thousands upon thousands of reps needed for deep mastery and complex skills, and all the way to cultivating these organizational cultures where mistakes are actually examined openly for systemic insights. The power hidden within what we call failure becomes really clear, doesn't it? It's less about avoiding the fall, more about understanding the ground you landed on.
Indeed. It really is about adopting that curriculum of failures mindset, where every single misstep isn't some judgment on your worth or capability, but it's a paid-for lesson. Tuition in the most brutal, but maybe the most valuable MBA you could ever get. It's a fundamental shift, isn't it?
Yeah.
Asking us to separate those difficult feelings, the frustration, the disappointment, from the cold, hard data the setback provides. The goal isn't ultimately to avoid falling. It's to learn how to chart every current, every hidden reef. Sometimes, yeah, by bumping right into them. It's a brave way to operate.
And what all this means for you, really, is that the true path to innovation, to mastery, it isn't about flawless execution from day one. Nobody gets it right the first time or even the 10th time. It's about an unwavering commitment to learning, to adapting, to growing from every single experiment, every attempt, regardless of the immediate outcome. The real wisdom doesn't come from never failing. It comes from failing productively, openly, and just relentlessly.
And this perspective, it suggests that maybe the most valuable insights you're missing right now, they might be hiding in the very failures you've been taught to avoid or feel ashamed of. It's a profound thought, isn't it? To consider that those moments we least want to think about, those experiences that felt like proof of our limitations, maybe they were actually unrecognized tuition payments. Payments for a powerful, deeply personalized education that no course or textbook could ever truly provide.